Okay, perfect. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Daijiang Li, and I just started my position here as assistant professor in Louisiana State University and the USA. And today I wanted to talk about urbanization and the plant phenology and potentially more. Um, okay, so first, so urbanization, we now like around 57% of our human population live in urban area compared with just about 30% 70 years ago. And by 2050, we expect about 70% of human population will live in an urban area. And here is a map of major cities, like over 1 million of people in the sort of a big city distribution. So obviously urbanization is happening and it is accelerating over the, across the world. But then the question is, what's the impact of urbanization on ecosystems? So we undoubtedly, urbanization will have huge impact on the ecosystem, but to what extent and how is still unknown. And for that, I think a plant phenology can be an excellent sort of indicator of such impacts because phenology is such an important trait of plants that they are very sensitive to environmental change. And if we wanted to look at how urbanization affects the ecosystem, I think phenology can be an excellent candidate to look at it. And also we have lots of data available for plant phenology, either observatory data or remote sensing data or even herbarium data from like specimens we can digitize with millions of digitization of specimen images, and we can extract the phenology information from there. That would give us kind of historical view of how plant phenology respond to different environmental change, including urbanization. So, but previously, most of such study either focus on a couple of cities or just a handful of species. So really like what kind of the general trend of how urbanization affect phenology is still unknown. And previous large scale study about urbanization on phenology mostly focus on remote sensing data that will only give us kind of vegetative phenology across the canopy, which we cannot look at the species specific responses. So does the effect of urbanization on plant phenology vary across region with different climate is still unknown. And to look at this question, previously I took advantage of a big observatory plant phenology data and looking at the US as well as the European. And then here I look at the flower and leaf out of plants, actually 136 of them, but most of them are trees. And then I'm looking at how the human population density, which I use as a measure of urbanization, and intact with the background temperature. So sort of if there's significant interaction, then they will indicate that the impact of urbanization on the phenology will change across different regions. And here's sort of one major results. And this is the flower and this is leaf out. And we can see, so average temperature is the x-axis and the y is the median day of the year. So sort of the onset of flower and leaf out. We can see in cold area, say -5 average temperature. This is, I think this is from, if I remember correctly, that's November, previous November to May, I think. So we can see in the cold region with higher human population density, we are going to have early flower as well as early leaf out. So that makes sense. But like in warmer end, so like Florida, with higher population density, we actually see the pattern reversed. So here with higher population density, we have slightly delayed flowering and leaf out. The exact mechanisms, we're not sure yet, but there's some hypotheses which I will not be able to to talk about that because of the time concern here. So that's onset. What about the leaf senescence? And similar thing. It's just a strong interaction between the background temperature and the urbanization, which again we use the human population density as a approximate here. And we can see, so here this purple line is a cold region. So we can see in the cold region with higher human population density, we're going to have a delayed leaf senescence. But like in the warm end, so the warm city with higher human population density, we actually have advanced leaf senescence. So that's interesting. And transfer that of onset and leaf senescence, then we can look at the growing season duration. And here we can see that the duration, again, in the cold region with urbanization, we're going to have a extended growing season. However, like in warm end, the growing season, the duration is getting shorter. This is actually predicted by some climate change models, but that's only focused on climate change. So I think there's a recent paper, I think in 2015 in PLOS Biology, they predict that actually in warm area, like a subtropic, tropic area, the suitable plant growing days will decline for, over 100 days in some extreme areas. So this sort of agree with what we know from modeling of climate change. So again, super interesting pattern here. So based on this sort of modeling results, then we can predict a specific city, say Baton Rouge here and Louisiana. And using the model, I'd expect, in the urban area, like downtown area, then we're going to have, compared with rural area, we're going to have a later leaf out, early senescence, so the shorter growing season. And flower, well, based on the model we have, it's actually advanced still, and duration maybe longer, but we don't have any information about fruiting. But I just like sort of move the ball of the flowering to be the fruit. So, but that's sort of some prediction or hypothesis there. And to validate this prediction, then we need actual observatory data from the field, and potentially, use experiment. We can look into the mechanisms there too. So suppose we establish 3 transects here along the urbanization gradient, and we have 3 sites within each transect. And then within each site, we can have a 20-meter by 20-meter plot, and then maybe we can establish a 1 square meter quadrat to monitor understory phenology. And then we can connect the soil dampers and also deploy environmental sensors to record climate, the night condition, disturbance, and we can look at the satellite data for landscape variables, sort of like such information. So with this data, I think we can look at the first, whether the prediction is valid, and also what's the potential drivers for this change. And with this information, for example, we can look at the phenology and how the phenology of plants change across urban gradient. And also, if we look at the interaction between this urban and the native and non-native species, then potentially we can look at how the native and the non-native species, their phenology, the relationship between phenology and urbanization gradient differ or not. And this can actually beyond phenology, because once we have this site is established, we will do a vegetation survey to look at the species composition, and therefore we can have the diversity value for each site. So we can look at how the diversity change across urbanization gradient, and also how this native and non-native species diversity change too. There's also other things we can look at once we have this sort of a site established, that including animal data. If we say install some camera traps to catch wildlife, and also soil microbes too, if we choose to kind of sample the soil materials. So that's sort of some idea I have about like one city. So this is one city, but I think to look for generality, we do need to expand it. So potentially this can be an add-on of the GUBIC, like especially the phase 3 Mark just talked about at the beginning. If we do plan to replicate the experiments across different cities, then I think sampling phenology on top of the species composition there can be very useful, but then also that comes with challenges too. So first, the funding, like where should we get funding there? I think one model we can borrow is the nutrient network that individually, like we sort of in charge with the funding, come up with funding for that. So I don't expect that this will be like a huge number of money. But then that also comes with the question of commitment. I think a 3 transect per city may be just too many. So maybe we can talk about 1 transect per city. And potentially we can even just look at 2 sites per transect, just like the urban area and the rural area, just to save the effort, to reduce effort, and compare with GUBIC's sampling, so that potentially we don't need a very frequent sampling there, but phenology we do need a frequent visit, like especially in early spring, or growing season, especially the beginning and the end of growing season, we potentially need to visit the sites every week, so we can visit. So that can be a potential challenge. So the frequency can be a challenge, but we can potentially reduce it. And especially, during the middle of the growing season potential, and also in the winter, we can maybe go there every month. And also this challenge of site selections, but I guess this is not just about the phenology site, but also in general for the GUBIC phase 3 experimental network there. Anyway, so that's sort of my this is some idea of establishing sort of a urban phenology network as a can be an add-on of the GUBIC phase 3 design there. And if you're interested, here's my email, and we can talk from there, or potentially I can create a spreadsheet from the GUBIC attendance Google Sheet there, and then we can, maybe we can just write down our names there to form a working group. And I mean, it's just, we can just talk at this moment. There's no commitment involved yet. So yeah, just some idea, and I can take any question or suggestions you have. Thanks.